And we're live, Sasha Graham. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Hello, everyone. So far, I see Gerald from Tarot Stash and Mendy, but obviously the notification's just going out, and it'll be updating as we go. And so I want to thank everybody for coming. Obviously, if you have any questions or comments, put them in all caps or try and get my attention somehow. Me in the chat. It's a little bit of a challenge for me. Well, Sasha and I were just talking about the Jersey Shore because Sasha spent some time in New Jersey.
Hmm.
And she lives in Manhattan, which is 90 minutes on the train from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So I was just down in Philly having a cheesesteak. Because I used to make horror movies back in the 90s, and they're re-releasing a bunch of them. So one of my co-stars is down in Philly. So I hopped the train down and spent the afternoon down there, and we shot some stuff. It was fun.
oh, that's so interesting. I saw that about you that you were into horror films. My partner Steven is like obsessed with horror movies. So I'm pretty sure I should have asked him if he knew who you were. But so I saw that you were an actor, and that's really cool. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Your
Yeah.
experiences?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because it actually really ties in with the tarot work that I do, believe it or not. And a lot of people are like, what? How does that work? But back in the 90s, when I was like in my 20s, I was a B horror movie actress, and I wound up working in all of these movies that went straight to Blockbuster Video. And I was like on the cover art of the boxes. These were like vampire, alien, like crazy movies where I actually played these really juicy roles. I was always a supernatural creature, where I was always, I wasn't like a final girl. I wasn't like a girl getting stabbed. I was the supernatural creature. And what's interesting is that life evolved and I moved into the world of tarot and started working there. But kind of the onus of what I do is figuring out our supernatural powers as, spirits in the material world. And there's a lot about horror and tarot, and actually horror and sacred ritual in terms of opening yourself up to the unknown, and looking into the darkness and looking to seek into, find wisdom, things that normal people don't see, that often horror movies do. And it's the same thing we do when we read tarot, which is we're looking to interface with the invisible world. We're looking to maybe talk with ghosts or ancestors, or find our own hidden talents. So it's all kind of similar.
It's so funny how so many of us have a similar kind of uh, background. Like our childhoods, or I'd be willing to bet that most of us, liked horror films. We were obsessed with ghost stories and going to haunted places. It's such a huge part of like it's kind of like what gets you into tarot. So that's really it's fascinating. It's just crazy how so many of us are so similar. So
Yeah. Well, it's what makes us human. And I think that, it's an interesting thing. I think one of the functions that tarot readers, or that just even a deck of tarot cards serves, is it's a reminder to most quote unquote normal. If you're not a tarot reader, if you're just a sort of quote unquote average Joe, maybe you're not spending that much time thinking about the invisible world and spirits and things that you can't necessarily see. But a tarot reader serves kind of that same hierophant purpose that priests or gurus do, right? We remind people that there's more to the world than what meets the eye. And so it's kind of like the world that we live in, and I think it's a function that we serve for other people that certainly ghost stories do. So I host a ghost storytelling event once a month out in Brooklyn. And it's really interesting because ghost stories function as a way for normal people, quote unquote, non-tarot readers, right, non-metaphysical practitioners. A ghost story is the way that they can speak about the supernatural and make sense of crazy things that aren't necessarily easily explained. And that's very much the role of a ghost story. It's also the role of horror. So I think all of these things are very similar. It's where we all come from. It's like how, when we're kids, we're all super scared of the dark. We're so like fascinated and terrified at the same time of these things which seem bigger than us, but that are also familiar. So this is the space of the uncanny. This is synchronicity. This is, it's all part of that big juicy soup. that we get to work in.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you get into, I know this is kind of a cliche question, and feel free to talk about anything that, maybe you haven't addressed before with like your origin, but the obviously I wanted to ask you how you sort of transformed in, well, like, when did you start reading tarot? When did it become obvious that you wanted to do something with tarot?
Well, the funny thing about becoming a tarot reader was that literally I was already working with tarot. I'm a Halloween baby. I love tarot cards, always had. And so I was an actress, and then I went to college, then I was a stay-at-home mom with my daughter. When my daughter went off to school, to kindergarten, my husband was like, okay, time for the next, what are you going to do? What's your next thing, Sash? And I literally was pulling a card a day, asking the cards, like, what should I do? Like, I didn't know what my next step was, but I did know that if you ask a question every day of the cards, you're going to get an answer eventually. And it hit me. It was like a tower moment. One day I flipped and I went at the card and I was like, oh, I should read tarot, because being a tarot card reader, you're in charge of your own schedule. And like you said, I'm here in Manhattan, so I knew that during the day I could see private clients, and then at nighttime I could hire myself out as a tarot reader to events, because there's always so many parties and events going on. And it would give me the flexibility to also be there for my daughter whenever she would need me. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. And it just seemed like the right thing to do. And I had no idea when I started that that my work with tarot would then kind of transform into events and books and speaking and teaching. But that was just me kind of following the magic of the cards, being present, asking questions.
That's amazing. And so you're beyond a tarot reader at this point. You're like you are Llewelyn's heavy hitter writer these days. It seems like Llewelyn, they just released the 1909,
Yes.
and you wrote the book for that.
Yes.
You wrote the ultimate guide to the tarot, the Rider Waite Smith, which is a massive project.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's a big book.
yeah, so you're a very well respected person. I mean, in terms of, and it's funny because I'm having you. I had last week. Or not last week, but my last episode, I had Camellia Elias on, who's like, she's not very woo at all. She's very kind of logical type reader, and she's more Tarot de Marseille. You are very Rider Waite Smith. You are like right now, you are like the Rider Waite Smith person. It seems like it to me.
Yeah. And it's really, it's the deck that I vibe with. And it's so funny because I'm just about to, it's up for pre-sale, but I'm still creating the text to go along with it, the dark side of the Rider Waite Smith Tarot, which is coming out through Llewelyn and Los Scarabeo. And it is one of those spaces that I enter into. And, I have a lot of my family were actually in London at the same time as the Golden Dawn and had very similar social circles. So the whole kind of Rider Waite Smith particular origin. And I live in a part of the city where Pamela Coleman Smith, her artwork was exhibited at Arthur Stieglitz's gallery on this block, on my block, like
Wow.
literally right over there. The Morgan Library, which has the Visconti Sforza Tarot, is 3 blocks from me. So it's odd. It's not even by choice necessarily. It's just where I find myself landing. So yeah, I love the Rider Waite Smith Tarot. I love the philosophy that it contains and every single thing that it can possibly address.
Yeah. What was it like? First off, how did that come about? The book, the Ultimate Guide to the Rider Waite Smith. Was that?
So that's
Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so Llewelyn's complete book of the Rider Waite Smith Tarot is part of the Llewelyn book of series. So anybody can go to a bookstore or Amazon and find like Llewelyn's complete book of astrology, Llewelyn's complete book of numerology. And so they asked me, Sash, would you write the complete book of Rider Waite Smith Tarot? And I was so excited to do it because though I was very familiar with the deck and very familiar with tarot, I was very interested in writing in finding out what was Arthur Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith, what were they doing? So this wasn't a book about what I think tarot is or how I think tarot should be interpreted. This was purely an examination of how that deck got to be the world's best-selling tarot deck, and what was it? What was their intention behind it? And of course, I had looked through and read the pictorial key to the tarot, but I had never deconstructed it, and it's not an easy read. He's writing in code. He's trying not to reveal the secrets of the Golden Dawn. He's also, so it was just this wonderful kind of deep dive for me to find out what was going on. And writing that book forever transformed my relationship with the tarot, with the way in which I even view divinity and spirituality, because the system in place, it really informs how we communicate with the other side. And how we get to be kind of the adventurers, the occultist, right? Gets to be the adventurer, the Indiana Jones of their experience of the invisible world. It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Must have been a lot of work, though. I mean, it would intimidate me to do something like that, because first off, the title itself, The Ultimate Guide to the Rider Waite Smith. I mean, that in itself is like, that's a big deal right there, you know what I mean? And so just the work and the time that must have went into that is got to be monumental.
It was so much fun. It was so much fun, and I got to work with a section of the New York Public Library, the Berg collection, which it's a really hard collection to actually get into. You have to be either an academic or a researcher. They have, and so, part and parcel of writing historical books is actually having the documents in front of you. You get different information when letters, or like, Pamela Coleman Smith's broadsheets are like right in, oh, there's Jonathan.
Yeah, Jonathan's here. You could probably see, if you click up on the top right, you might be able to, if you click on comments, you should be able to see people who are in the room and questions. I'm so bad at keeping up with the chat, but there's quite a few people here now. So I welcome everybody who's just coming in, and thanks for stopping by. So Jonathan's saying here that he loves your writing style. He read my mind, actually. That's why I put it up there, because I was thinking, you really have this very conversational, humorous kind of writing style. You're really a talented writer.
Thank you.
And I really enjoyed I enjoyed the Ultimate Guide to the Writers. Although it's been a while, I tried to revisit it recently. But I really enjoyed The Magic of Tarot, which was the most recent, and just really, really well done. So
thank you so much. Well, I feel like sometimes it's the interesting thing about working with ancient texts or working with occult texts is that on one hand, it can be very kind of complicated and complex, but on the other hand, it can be very simple. So I think that it's one of those things where I'm so beguiled and fascinated by the way that these things work that when I'm writing and sharing this stuff, I want to be able to speak to as many people as possible. I want to be able to make it comfortable and make it fun and make it really, really interesting, because the worlds have so much wisdom to impart, Yeah,
I really enjoyed how you explained Kabbalah in your Ultimate Guide. You used the pinball machine analogy.
Yeah.
Because that's one of those things where I kind of skip the Kabbalah section of every tarot book. I'm like, okay, I'm not that interested in it. It's something that I think I've been more drawn to Pythagorean numerology, although I'm sure there's more of a link between Kabbalah and Pythagorean numerology than I realized. But it's just something that was always kind of not really appealing to me. But I read your description of it was really well done, and it was and it just made a lot of sense.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's another one. The light bulb went off in my head, right? Because I resisted Kabbalah for a super long time, and so I had been studying it with the tarot school. And when the light bulb went off about really essentially the kind of simplicity with which it functions, it's like numerology, right? Is fairly simple. You pretty much can get everything you need to know about literally the formation of the world, how you operate as a creative human being, from an ace to a 10. Or from the 0 to the 10, right? And then definitely throw in the 3 and the 4, and you kind of begin to understand the way everything works. It can seem like a complex system, but it's not. And Kabbalah is one of those things that has so much wisdom to teach you. And it is relatively simple. Now, most of this stuff, most of this esoteric information comes to us from medieval grimoires, right? And the occultists of the 18th and 19th centuries, or even Arthur Waite, they would rewrite, right, essentially, and continue to make these things very thick and very hard to access. And one of the things I learned by deconstructing the pictorial key to the tarot is it's like deconstructing a poem, and when you start to deconstruct this stuff, you find all of this magic in between the lines, which is what makes sense to you, and it really brings you into your own truth. So I think that a lot of things that can be very complex should be made more simple. And I think there's a lot of people who like to kind of hold that knowledge, like, oh, I know what this is and you don't, and blah blah blah. And I just think that's not helpful to anybody but that person's ego. So I'm glad the pinball thing helped you, because the Kabbalah is really cool.
It did, yeah. I'm going to actually do more of a study on your book. I've decided that in the next after I have one other project I'm working on, but after I wrap it up, I want to do like kind of a focus on Kabbalah, because reading your book, I noticed I knew a lot more of it than I realized, because reading all of these people like Rachel Pollack and Robert Place and all these other figures whose books I've read. A lot of their methods and numerology and things come from Kabbalah. So I had already knew the basic, it's like when you think of aces, for instance, the ace being, the totality of the suit. I knew that, but I just didn't realize where that came from. You know what I mean? It's like I think of aces in a Kabbalistic way. I just didn't realize how Kabbalistic it was,
And anybody who's working with the cards, we've all been looking at those symbols for years and years and years. Yeah. So it's tarot to me is very much like a garden. So when you're gardening, you're working with plants, herbs, flowers. A couple of years into it, you really start to get to know, not from book knowledge, but you get to know from hands-on knowledge how rosemary operates, how marigolds operate, how lavender operates, where it likes to be, what it's good for. Right? And this is the whole point of tarot, that when we're working with these symbols, when we're coming back to it again and again, that's what an archetype is. It's a unique intelligence that each of us are accessing. So it's teaching us, whether or not we realize it or not. And that's what you're describing is really exciting at that moment, where you're like, oh, I always recognized that an ace was the font or the beginning of the entire suit, which is the same thing as an eye opening up in the darkness, if we're talking about spirituality. So we know, and that's the thing with teaching tarot and leading classes, is that everyone, you guys all know so much. You know everything you need to know. It's just about uncovering it within you.
So we have a couple questions here. I just want to make sure I get to them before I pass by them and forget. What are your thoughts on the Sola Booska Tarot? I haven't used it, but they say it influenced the RWS imagery.
So the Sola Booska Tarot, and for anybody who doesn't know, the Sola Booska Tarot is much older than the Rider Waite Smith deck, and it's probably the only other deck which had minors illustrated. So one of the reasons Rider Waite Smith was a big deal when it came out was, Pamela Coleman Smith was innovative. She illustrated the minors with scenes, with people doing things on them. So it wasn't just like a spade symbol of 7 cups, it didn't look like playing cards. Now the Sola Booska deck was on display at the British Museum's reading room when she was designing the deck. So if you look at images like the 10 of Wands, which is, that person with like all the 10 wands heavily, she took that image directly, took the inspiration for her 10 of Wands from the Sola Booska deck. The 3 of Cups, or I'm sorry, the 3 of Swords in the Sola Booska deck is that iconic graphic 3 swords through the heart. So you can look and see. I write about it in the complete book of Rider Waite Smith, but you can find it online as well. So the Sola Booska deck profoundly influenced the Rider Waite Smith, which profoundly influences most of our tarot decks today, because most of them tend to be clones that contain some of that same imagery.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a couple more comments here. So let's see. I'm starting to study the Golden Dawn to get more background on the RWS and Waite. Any further reading suggestions?
Yes. Okay. So, for Golden Dawn information, so of course, Mary Greer wrote the incredible book Women of the Golden Dawn. I think honestly, it's interesting. It's interesting for you to actually do your own research. Believe it or not, there's a lot. Oh, thank you so much for or it's interesting to actually research the people who are like the founding members of the Golden Dawn. I think that when you do kind of your own deep dive, and maybe I'm just saying that because no other texts are immediately springing to mind for Golden Dawn information, but it's interesting to find out what they were after. It's interesting. Like I learned so much reading stuff that Yeats had written about his work with the Golden Dawn. So yeah, it's interesting to do your own like deep dive, and there's a lot of stuff in libraries. There's a lot of digitized archives that you can dive into and kind of find your own things.
Yeah, the solo Booska is just. I first off, I love historic tarot. It's one of my great passions. But the solo Booska, I have not I have not really attempted to really kind of digest yet. I'm actually looking at it right now on my shelf, and I think it's the Game of Saturn, which is the great book on it, sitting on my shelf. And one of these days, I'm going to look at it. But it's so different than any other deck of its time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, just completely different. Has a different feel, and also feels more um, alchemical or magical. Like it has there's more of an obvious link there. I think.
There's definitely like well, and obviously because it's one of it's the oldest minor illustrated decks,
Yes.
right? And so you know that there's something going on, and that's what one of the interesting things about historical tarot is this kind of open-ended question, which is what were the creators doing? What were these decks being used for? And there's a whole lot that we don't know. But we do know when the older decks, like when the Visconti Sforza deck was created, that predated the Gutenberg press. So we're talking about tarot and decks that the general public was using, but the general public was also nobody was literate, nobody was reading back then unless you were like part of the elite. And so the way that most things were communicated, the church and other like moralic things were all through images. So these decks are talking, these decks were speaking. And yeah, so it's a very curious to kind of like go down those rabbit holes to try and figure
Yeah.
out what's actually there.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your Do you have a favorite historic deck or like the style? It's hard, I know.
I don't
How
honestly.
about in terms of reading? Do you read with any historic decks or
I
use all?
don't. I
That's funny.
really don't. You know what? I usually have about 3 decks that I'm in constant work with, and they're kind of like my friends. So if I'm in a darker phase of my life, I'm using those Scarabeo vampire decks. If I'm in like like right now, I create decks. So I've created the
Yes.
Dark Tarot
Yeah,
and the
of
Tarot of
course.
the Haunted House, and I've got the Tarot of the Witch's Garden. Oh, coming out next years. So right now I'm working a lot with the Darkwood Tarot because I'm really doing my own shadow work right now. And it's this interesting thing where it's a different experience to read cards for yourself with a deck that you've created because it's already got, I feel like, a lot of me inside of it.
Yeah.
So it can be weird and awesome and interesting. And then Prisma Visions is something right now that I'm just super vibing with. It's like my best bud. It's probably because it's telling me everything I want to hear. Like, when you do that with a particular deck, it's kind of like
Yeah.
giving you what you want. So I don't
It
know.
is a very dark. It's a very watery deck. It's very emotional, as is your Darkwood. But I just received I backed and I totally forgot about it. The minis of them. You know, James R. Eads decks. All three. The Prisma Visions and the two others. And I got them yesterday. I think it was yesterday or the day before. But I haven't even opened them yet. But I'm excited to do to do that.
I love that deck. I love it so much. The interesting, I acquired, so I was teaching in China And I was teaching for a publisher in China, and so the classroom had a big glass case with all of the books or all of the tarot decks that they distribute. And the Prism of Visions was sitting there on a shelf, and you know how it has an eye, like a beautiful eye on the cover, and it just kept catching my eye, and it was like calling to me. And when the classes were done and I was ready to go home, the owner of the company was like, "Here, by the way, this is for you," and handed me that deck. So
Wow.
I felt like we were meant to be.
Absolutely. So you mentioned shadow work. You know, that's something that's a lot of people kind of find I don't know if it's intimidating, but it's for me it isn't a bit intimidating. I don't know. I don't like I feel like I'm always to some extent doing some type of shadow work with tarot in an unconscious way, when I'm interpreting the images. But in terms of saying, well, I want to do some shadow work, it's like I don't know what to do.
Exactly,
like
what would that entail, right?
yeah, what does shadow work entail for you?
To be very clear, when I'm talking about shadow work, I'm talking literally about the kind of pool of potential that exists inside of you that you're not acknowledging, or that I'm not acknowledging. So it's things that exist that we choose to ignore. And one of the things that I know is true of a lot of readers, and certainly of myself, is that we tend to often see what we want to see in the cards. Who doesn't want to see what you want to see? But that is not the point. It's not why I don't come to tarot to know what I already know, or to make myself feel better about the choices that I'm making, even though sometimes I do. And so I feel like, if we are to be our own best readers, and I feel like it's so important for us to start with ourselves, especially if we're out there reading for clients or teaching to others, or reading books, we have to be brave enough to look at those things that we shy away from. And this is what our function is. We exist in the shadows, in the darkness. When people come to us for readings, it's not because everything's going great in their life. It's because they're terrified and they want to know that things are going to be okay, that they're going to be okay. So we have to be willing to constantly push our boundaries as readers, as artists, as humans, so that we can evolve, because that's the point of why we're here. And so when we're out of alignment with our high priestess self, 9 times out of 10, there's a shadow reason for it. There's something going on that we don't want to look at. So shadow work is about taking responsibility for yourself in a card. If you flip a card, and in the Darkwood Tarot, the great way to do shadow work is if a reversal comes up, take that reversal as something about yourself. So if you're asking a question like, what's the best thing I can do today to have a great day? And you flip a card and it's like a reversed 3 of Swords, heartache. Think, okay, what am I doing right now that's maybe causing a little bit of heartache with someone else? Immediately my mind would go to, okay, was I just kind of rude to my husband when I shouldn't have been? Am I angry at someone and taking that out on them in a way that's unfair? Is that really about them, or is that about me? That's shadow work.
Yeah.
And I think it's essential, and because it helps you take responsibility for your actions. And there's also so much good stuff in the shadow. Talents, hopes, dreams, everything that you think you don't deserve, things that you think you're not worthy of. Shame is such a big part of the shadow. And these are the things that block out the seeds of our soul, like who we are, our high priestess self. And everybody on looking and listening to this knows that when you're in alignment with who you are and you're in the moment with that, that's when magic unfolds.
Yeah.
That's the point of why we're here. And so shadow work helps. I think shadow work is the best way to do that.
Yeah, when you analyze those things, well, for me, I can only speak for me personally, but I'm always sort of floored by what you find out about yourself. Like, um, if I get into like a disagreement with my mother, for instance, or something really bothers me, and I sit down and I think about it, a lot of times it's really projection, is what I find out. It's like those things that I see that my mother has done, and I get along with my mother great. I love her to death, but I'm just using her. I'm picking on her right now. But like, a lot of times I get really angry at something that she does because I do it myself, because it's like I'm so much like her, and I'm like, and it, and that, to me, that's what
Yeah.
shadow work is. It's like, and then
Yes.
you learn that about yourself, and then you can be aware of it in the future, and then kind of develop better as a person.
And
you
it
know
helps you. It helps you. So like jealousy is another one of those things. And you'll see this and anybody who knows the Dark Wood Tarot, it's a very female, it's a very feminine deck. And it taught like the Five of Swords is a woman throwing swords into another woman's back. Right. So this is a deck where I was very interested in the way that women treat other women. And jealousy is a big part of that, right? And jealousy is one of those things in shadow work. There's nothing innately wrong with feeling a tinge of jealousy or looking at someone and being like, ooh, because jealousy points you towards what you want. And you might not even know you want it until you see someone else doing it. So like the key with the shadow work of jealousy is to
this
feel
one here, right? Was this the Five of Swords that you're okay?
Yeah. So she's got that woman strung up, and she's throwing swords into her back, which to me is the epitome of the Five of Swords. How are you speaking to others, and how are you accepting the words of others? Right. So you could either be the one throwing swords or the one tied up, but allow those darker, ickier things to point you towards where you want to go. It's like when you're feeling jealous about somebody, it's like having a craving for a Big Mac or having a craving for a cigarette. Just because you have a craving doesn't mean you have to have one. You can feel it and go, okay, I don't have to indulge myself. But I think a lot of us stay in that jealous space, which isn't helpful, rather than moving to what we want for ourselves and figuring that out, letting it be kind of like a compass for us.
Yeah. Yeah, there's really a lot there that can really be explored. That's really fascinating. But thank you for explaining that. I feel like the unconscious mind, sometimes it's so intelligent. I mean, like I had a really great moment in kind of understanding the unconscious mind. One time I was sat down to play the piano, and I couldn't remember how to play the song. But when I stopped thinking about how to play it, I just played it like perfectly.
Yes.
And I was thinking to myself, my unconscious mind is smarter than I am.
Yeah.
Because
and muscle memory too, because it's the same thing in dancing, right? If you're thinking about how to do the cha-cha or the merengue after you've learned it, you get all mixed up. And the minute you just stop listening to the music and start to go, you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes we get in our own way, like you really can trip yourself up mentally in so many ways. So
And the same is true in tarot readings, especially when you're starting to read for the public or you're reading for something that feels very high stakes. The minute you let go of all of that and just kind of align yourself into the moment, that it all flows, and you find out it's all good.
somebody had a question here. I'm trying to see where it is. It was about Greek myths.
Ooh.
Do you find a lot of the pictorial symbology connects with the ancient Greek mystery schools?
Oh my gosh, thank you for asking this question. First of all, can I tell you that, and yes, it does connect with ancient Greek mystery schools. And it's so funny. I happened to be in Athens for the very first time just this past November. And it was this crazy last minute trip that my husband surprised me for my birthday. And I was really busy at the time. And it wasn't until whenever I go to a sacred site anywhere in the world, my favorite thing to do is go there early before the sun comes up, so I can be with the site or with the space in that beautiful time when the world is still dark and most people are still sleeping. And I had forgotten about how much kind of work and attention that I had given the mystery schools until that morning that I sat with the Parthenon. And it was unbelievable. And for anybody watching, like there's a point when you're researching things that have happened in the past and you're trying to access that wisdom. And I think that a lot of us know when we're cued into the energy of that thing. And what's really fascinating about the symbolism of Greek mystery schools is also the fact that it's the birthplace, right, of all kind of Western classical drama, and literature and beauty and art and all of that. So yeah, it's highly, highly. I mean, it's that's I think the wellspring of so many of all of the symbols that we find in tarot, and it's an amazing thing to be there and to interface with it in person. I was surprised by how it felt.
Yeah, I really want to do that. I know Rachel Pollack. Well, I think she's not doing it this year, but she used to do a guided tour to the Eleusinian Mysteries every year. I think maybe it was every couple years, but I thought, well, what a dream of a trip that would be to like go to Eleusis with Rachel Pollack and just play with your tarot cards in Greece. That would be like a dream come true
Imagine
for
how.
me.
Well, it's like going. It's like, yeah. I mean, because all of Europe is like walking into a museum, right? Because it's all like there, embedded in the ground and in the architecture, in the air. But it definitely brings it all to such a deeper, more profound.
Yeah, you were well, first of all, I want to show you this. I just got this. This is a really cool tarot deck. It's called Tarot of the Greek Magical Papyri. I don't know if you
Ooh,
saw this or not, but it's a really interesting deck. It's by Jason Augustus Newcomb, and I did a walkthrough recently on it. But it's a tarot deck with 78 cards plus an extra 22 major arcanas, and all of the majors. There's no titles or numbers anywhere. It's just names of the gods, and it's done in a pottery style art. You might like this.
that is
So
fabulous.
yeah, it's really really cool. So I figured I'd show that to you.
That's really fantastic. Talk about kind of like a way to just get right into the kind of the archetypal energy of of Greek intelligence archetype. That's amazing.
Exactly. Just looking here to see if I have any more questions. I'm sure there are.
Wait, I see one from Andrea Ward. It says, "What do
Andrew
you
Ward.
think Rider Waite Smith would say about the way we approach tarot these days?" That's actually a great question. I'm assuming that question is like, how would Arthur? I think Arthur Waite would have a much different reaction to how people are using tarot today than Pamela Coleman Smith would. I think Pamela Coleman Smith would be utterly delighted by every single way that tarot is being used. Arthur Waite, I feel like he was a bit of a sycophant. I don't know. I feel like he would want more control over how things were done. But I think Pamela would think it was absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, I'm sorry I can't find that question, but thank you
No,
for saying it. So how about the magic of tarot? Because that book is really, it was. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was like a great kind of refresher course in a way for me,
mm-hmm.
And so, what was your intention here? What was your main goal for this book? If you
So
want to talk a little bit about it.
yeah, so Llewelyn was like, "Hey, Slash, you never really wrote a beginner book. You've never written a kind of basic. This is how to read tarot. Like you know." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're right." And at that point, I had been teaching so much that I had all of this material developed. So the magic of tarot, even though it's a beginner book, it's meant to work for anybody because at the end of the day, we all just want to play with our cards. So there's tons of exercises, loads of writing prompts inside of the book because, I mean, in the funniest way, you don't really need the books on tarot. All you need to know is how you interface with the arcana. That's going to teach you everything that you need to know. And it's kind of like interpreting your dreams. I feel like throw dream dictionaries out the window. You should understand what the symbols mean to you. You shouldn't be saying, "Well, this is what the symbol means to someone else, so I'm just going to say that." Like what that if the information is not coming from you, none of us taste, a peach the same way. None of us eat, we're all so incredibly different, and our experience with the cards are different. When we're working with tarot, we're talking about how we interface with the invisible world. It's infinite. It's infinite, and so many of us, myself included, have abilities and qualities, things that we're able to do that we're not able to name. So much of what we're talking about is ineffable. It can't be put into description when we're doing shamanic work, when you're doing liminal dreaming, when you're meeting archetypal energies up front. You have to be the one on the edge, kind of figuring this stuff out for yourself. You kind of have to do the work. You have to do the experiences. So
Yeah.
you have to journey into the cards on your own, and then you find out that they're limitless. So much of the magic of tarot involves writing prompts, because I think that the act of just writing our response to how something feels to us, it helps us. Tarot card readers, we get stuck in our head. So you're moving very quickly, and the information flies, and we don't slow down and kind of write out what it is we're experiencing. We lose so much of that. So a lot of magic of tarot, it acts like the different chapters are like different gateways of how you can move into the cards, how you can use them. You can use them like in a fairy tale sense. You can use the 7 sacred cornerstones of constant magic, which is a way to use the 7 of cups to open up like incredible fonts of magic. Oh, thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, it is like a tarot class in a book. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, so it's really a text for you to get to know yourself with the cards, and with that kind of blow open the doors of possibility.
Yeah, I really liked. I mean, you covered a little bit of everything in there, and it's really in a way that is easy to digest. You know what I mean? It's not some of these introductory books can be really simple, and some of them can be really complex. And I feel like it's a nice value, your book, because it covers the magical aspect of it, but it also covers you cover numerology and a little bit of associations and things like that. And I just found it really interesting. In fact, I finished it again yesterday. I
Awesome.
actually I finished it yesterday. It made me think of something because you mentioned in the book about the devil card, and I've never actually heard anybody recommend this before, but it makes sense. You said that if you're reading for a stranger, sometimes you might want to take the devil card out of the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you do often, or?
Yeah, so well, and this was something I did back when I had a very active reading practice. I don't read for clients anymore. I don't do private readings. I don't do parties. But when I was like reading for the public at, say, like a big party, I would take out the death card. I never took out I don't know if I took out the devil
Was
card,
it
but
was it the devil or the death card?
it was the
Oh,
death.
it was the death card. I'm sorry, it was the death card.
And that's only because so many people, especially the general public, come to tarot with all these preconceived notions about what something means. And I had seen, not only had I had the experience of people sharing with me terrible experiences they had with really dark prophetic fortune tellers who told them horrible things that never came true, but that stuck in their head. Um, and I also had the experience of like younger people, when you're reading at a party and you're just reading for the general public. Like I've had, younger children come up to the table and look at a card and get scared. And I don't think that in a party situation, and again, like judge the party, like judge the moment for when it's happening. I just, sometimes it felt just safer for the crowd.
Yeah,
They're not going to sit down and get deep with me. Maybe they're
sure.
going to have a quick one card reading. So I didn't feel like the death card was something I needed to put into people's worlds on that particular night. I would not do that with a private client, with a real
Right.
reader.
Of course. Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And another thing you could obviously do is just mention that, hey, a little disclaimer about the death card. It doesn't mean literally physical death, you know, typically.
But
But
most people get so scared. They're so
oh yeah,
married to the image, they're not hearing what you're saying. And I also sometimes will take cards out of the deck in my morning when I pull a card a day. Because like if you're like having a great, like you wake up and you're having like a great day and you just know you don't want to see like the five of swords, take it out. Like I
yeah.
feel like adapt the deck to where you are and who you are and what you need. There's no shame in that.
No, I like that. I like breaking the rules and doing things like that. And you can do whatever you want with your tarot deck. I'm all for that. So Yeah, it's really interesting. But I was talking to my partner yesterday because he loves these horror shows. And they're like, but they're so ridiculous. Like they're so, like I watched them and laugh, and I think he watched them as like entertainment, but he like is just obsessed with them. But they'll bring out the tarot cards, and it's always the death card or the
Oh,
devil, and it's like so cliche. It's like somebody died here, or like what. I was telling him, I was like, tarot people laugh at this. I was like, we make jokes about how cliche the death card is. This. Oh, what did you say? I He was saying something, but yeah, I didn't know he was listening.
and that's exactly why it gets perpetuated again and again and again. But it's the power of an image.
Yeah,
It's the power of an image that most people aren't like us. They're not going to like spend decades of time and research and daily like journaling to kind of get to the heart of esoteric tarot. They'll just see like Levi's devil and be like, Satan, and like run
yeah,
in the direction. It just speaks to the power of imagery.
yeah. That's really cool. So I picked up this. Oh, they're ghost hunting shows. I'm sorry. I would clarify
Okay.
ghost hunting shows. He actually has a so Steven has a podcast where he talks about it's called Creek Talk. And he recaps old Dawson's Creek episodes. He actually did some acting work when he was young, and he's in a couple of the episodes like as an extra. Like,
No way!
yeah, it's funny.
Oh, I was so excited when they re-released Dawson's Creek on Netflix, but they took out all the good music. Did
Oh,
you?
they did. They did. They changed all the music. Yeah, they did.
I was
Oh
like
well, you
heartbroken.
yeah, you might want to check Steven's podcast out because he's a very big fan. It's called Creek Talk, and I wrote the introductory little tune, so I make sure I get credit for that. It's
That
like Creek Talk, his little theme song. But I will link that in the description box if anybody wants to. Or Steven, I don't know if Steven can link it, but we'll figure it out. It'll be in the info section if
such a
anybody's
good
interested.
show. Such a good show. Such good times.
So I thank you so much for doing this, and I thought, like to end this, I picked up this book yesterday. It's called 3,000 Questions About Me, and so it's like it's just got all these random questions. So I thought I would just, you know, I don't know, maybe let you pick a number from 1 to 3,000 and ask you one of the questions. What do you think?
Oh my God! Yeah, give me question number 999.
Okay, 999. Let's see here.
What a cool book!
Yeah, it's really cool.
That's a good thing to have on hand if you're sitting with people and they're like, "We don't know what to ask." You just
Okay,
okay.
yeah, exactly, true. So this is interesting. So how how often do you self-reflect is the question.
God, the question should be like, when am I not self-reflecting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Too
That's
much,
funny, isn't it?
too much.
Oh boy.
That's really funny. Yeah, no, introspection, right? Like, how am I feeling today? What is my point? Isn't that's the whole reason I probably grabbed my first deck of tarot cards. So I could have an
Very
answer
true.
to all of
I
it.
know that's so funny though. But yeah, it's a cool book, and of course you have a lot of questions in your book as well for like tarot practice and stuff. But that's why I grabbed it. I thought, there's so many times I'm struggling for a question, whether it's reading tarot cards or interviews or whatever, and I just thought it would come in handy, so I wanted to try it out. But
Wait, what's the last question? I'm just curious. What's question number 3000?
the question number 3,000: when you're sick, do you grin and bear it, or just curl up in bed as much as possible?
You
Yeah.
answer that one.
Okay, when I'm sick, do you grin and bear? Oh, I don't know. I think I just curl up in bed
Me
and
too.
like die for a few days. I'm so bad at being sick. I turn into a child.
Yeah.
I don't handle pain well, and I don't handle sickness well. So, you know, oh boy, that's funny. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for doing this, and thank you, Sasha. Do you have anything coming up you want to talk about? Any announcements or?
Yeah, I do actually. I have a ton of stuff coming up.
Yeah, please talk about whatever you like.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to be speaking at the Tide, the International Divination event in Dallas, Texas, which is put on by Soultopia, Michelle Welsh, in Dallas, which is, I think, in about 2 weeks. I'm going to be speaking at in July at the Witch City Tarot Gathering, and that's in Salem, Massachusetts. I'm going to be speaking I'm leading a tarot and yoga workshop at the Omega Institute this August. It's the end of August, and it's like a 3-day weekend, all immersive. It's tarot and yoga, where we really learn to embody the cards. There's a lot of meditations, and Omega is just beautiful, a beautiful campus. So I'll be there in August, and then I'm speaking at the Kingston Lenormand conference, Tarot and Lenormand conference in November. So anybody who wants to like travel and like hang out and do something, and I think there's a lot of virtual options for a lot of these different events. But in addition to that, here in New York City, I do host 2 monthly events live and in person, and they are so much fun. Both of my events are out in Industry City, Brooklyn. And one of them is called Spirited Away, Psychic and Paranormal event. So I bring together all of these like amazing tarot card readers and psychics and mediums. And so it's like this big kind of festival where you can come and get a reading, or you can take a workshop, or you can sit in a mediumship circle. There's craft cocktails. It's like so much groovy fun. We have a tea leaf reading workshop. We have a psychic spirit circle. There's a new moon or dark moon ritual happening, in addition to just all the amazing readers on hand. So that's every month. And then I also host Ghost Stories by the Fire, which is a crowdsourced spooky story share. And really, there's like a fire pit in front of the tasting room, so it's craft cocktails.
Oh, that's so fun.
Oh, it's so fabulous. And
where is this at? Is it Salem, right? You said? Is it
no,
Salem?
this is in Brooklyn. This is in
Brooklyn.
Sitting in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. So we're like right on the water. You can see the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, maybe we'll take the trip up. So you said that's the summer, right?
It's
When
every
was that
month,
again?
twice a
Oh, it's
month.
okay. All right. Is there a place where we can go to look at all this information, like
Yeah.
your website, hopefully?
Definitely. If you
Okay.
go to my classes and events, and you can just click, it'll take you to the listings of everything. All of these events are free. The ones I host are free. And go. Maybe you guys can come and share a story, because it is.
That would be fun.
It's
Steven
so
would like that. He's probably thinking, "Oh, we should do that," because we haven't been to New York in a while. We tend to go to DC a little more often, like when we just like want a quick getaway, or like the Delaware beaches or something. But New York is fun. We haven't been in a while, so yeah.
City needs like everybody to come and have fun.
Oh, absolutely. I love New York. I used to go all the time. I mean, Manhattan is one of my favorite places around the holidays, around Christmas time.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed the shopping, and, always went to the Dakota building, which is a very depressing thing to do. But it's part of my kind of Christmas tradition, the Dakota where John Lennon lived,
Yeah. Oh, I love the Dakota. I don't think it's depressing at all. I mean, it's an odd, dark.
Yes.
Well,
it's because of the history, I think, because John Lennon, met his end in front of the building, and it's kind of like but it looks like the kind of place that would be really haunted and kind of macabre in its own way. So fascinating in that regard. And
just
of course,
full circle. It's funny. One of my vampire movies in the '90s, that was the exterior we shot as my vampire's house. Like, there's this scene where like we get out and like are walking across the street. It's implied that that's the building where my vampire character lives. And I always thought that was super cool, because also Rosemary's Baby was shot in South Dakota.
Yes, it was.
It's a really creepy.
It is a creepy building. Yeah. There's a hotel too. I think it's in Chelsea. There's a really the Chelsea Hotel. Is it the one with like all the different rooms in the?
Yeah, and then there's also, there's a hotel like that. You guys should check this out, actually, if you're into that. It's called the Carlton Arms. It's an arts hotel where every single room in the hotel, and it's like half hotel, half hostel, so the prices are very reasonable. It's on 29th and 3rd Avenue. Okay. But every single room has been painted by a different artist. So it's got a very Desperately Seeking Susan vibe to it. You know,
Nice.
there's like an Egyptian room and a cloud room and like the Picasso room, and it's really funky and really fun. And you feel like, yeah, it feels like 1986 and fun.
Steven wants to know what the movie was called, the horror movie that you shot.
Oh, that was a movie called Addicted to Murder, which is
Nice.
actually being re-released in I think this year or next year.
Oh, okay. We'll keep an eye out for that.
Addicted to Murder.
We like horror movies. Steven likes them a lot more than I do. I just kind of it's I like more of the possession tales. Like I love like The Exorcist is my favorite movie of all time.
Did you see Saint Maud by chance?
No,
Oh,
I saw it though like on there, and I'm gonna have to watch it. It's on Netflix or something, isn't it?
so good.
Oh,
It
to
will
watch it.
hurt you. It's so good. It will hurt you. It is such a great exorcism movie. Oh my god.
Okay, yeah, I love that. In fact, every time we go to DC, it's part of the reason I like to go there. I go to see The Exorcist steps. It's so dumb, but and then of course you have M Street right there, which has all these fantastic cafes and stuff.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome.
Oh. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Sasha. And I'm going to put your website and all your information down below because you had so many events. I'm not going to remember all the details. So I will summarize basically in the info section everything. So you know it's there if in case anybody wants to take a trip to New York or Salem or wherever you're having events. And thank you so much, everybody, for stopping by today. And thank you again, Sasha Graham. And until next time, everybody, love and peace. Bye bye.